So, you guys done with that Year of the Dragon thing? We can talk about the new year now.
We are not done yet. Also, it's technically towards the Year of the Dragon. You see, it's because
There are
when you
so
consider
many
the first
games in
bit
this
of February, then
franchise.
we are reaching a part where
Well, I'm not indeed toward the year minus a bit of the dragon thing, so I don't care! Let's see what 2024 has in store for us. Welcome to the Music Arcade.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Music Arcade. I'm Galen, the SoundGuy Firestone.
I'm Ranakel, still in 2024.
And I'm Eddie, and I'm not a time traveler, so still 2024 as well.
Well, technically, you are a very slow, forward-facing only time traveler.
Yes, at a rate of 1 second per second.
Exactly.
As do we all.
How
Indeed.
has the year treated you so far, given that we are on the 14th of January at time of recording?
Well, on my end, the funny thing is that since our last recording, I bought a new SSD and I have way too much room for games on my PC now, and I can handle this.
Oh
Uh-oh.
no, too much room. Whatever shall you do?
I keep looking at my Steam library and going, okay, I don't know what I want to play now. Let's install a new thing. Where am I gonna install this? Oh, okay, I have a lot of room, 2 different SSDs now. That's
Just download Baldur's Gate 3 8 times.
I think it would be easier to just download a lot of Skyrim mod lists, but that's an option.
There is nothing easy about Skyrim mod lists, and you know it.
I could argue with you on that, but let's move to the future rather than a game released over a decade ago.
That people are still playing for some reason.
Some reason indeed. So yeah, 2024, we wanted to do a bit of a more loose episode to get ourselves back in the saddle, because it's been a while since we haven't had a recording of Music Arcade, and to just look ahead and cover what games don't exist yet, but we suspect are probably going to have some very enjoyable music. You may consider it a preview of the now playing of the future.
Yeah, I expect most, if not all, of these games that we're going to talk about today to be covered by now playing. Some of them have kind of conflicting release dates, which is a little terrifying.
Yeah, we're not 100% certain on games releasing in 2024 for all of them, but we're doing information publicly available.
Yeah, there's a lot of games still, since we're still in January, there's a lot of games with just to be announced release dates. They're just saying it will come sometime in 2024, so I imagine the overlap will get even worse.
But let's go with those we can reasonably suspect will release this year. So,
Well,
how about we start with a little bit of strategy?
This is
We
where
have,
I'm just going to stay back and sip my coffee, because I'm not really much of a strategy guy.
that's fair, but we do have a few very promising titles. Maybe 2024 is the year RTS makes a comeback?
Here's hoping. I know it has its fans.
It sure does. And there's 2 promising candidates, starting with Dorf, D-O-R-F, which plays very much in the line of a Red Alert 2, visually and with, like...
Okay, if you're
and
invoking Red Alert 2, it better have FMV cutscenes starring actors.
That would be incredible. We haven't seen sign of it yet. I think they're more leaning towards old 3D renders, if anything.
Cry.
Yeah, I think it's an indie production, so they might not have the capabilities
I'm
for that.
stopping you right there. There's plenty of people who would do this on the cheap just for the fun of it, and you know it. I don't need them to be big stars. It's not like you're gonna get. It's not like you're gonna get George Takei again, like Red Alert 3 did. But like,
yeah, exactly.
There's some voice actors out there who totally do it. Like,
literally, we talked about Year of the Dragon stuff. one of the reasons the Cabaret Club in Gaiden was made with live action was because of cost.
Yeah, it's just cheaper at that point to record them live than build new models for them.
Okay, that's fair.
But there are ways.
But looking at the game previews, it kind of looks like what if you had a strategy game set in a Wasteland or Fallout setting, but with the Red Alert 2 style graphics.
Yeah, kinda, yeah. And with a lot of units of very different sizes, and it's looking like it has a potential to be fun. And the trailer music has been enjoyable. It's no Frank Klepacki, don't get me wrong, but it's got a very late 90s vibe to it, which I feel is what they wanted to capture.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it's, at the very least, a game that is doing its best to be fun.
Yes, absolutely.
So even if it doesn't breathe new life into the RTS genre, it definitely feels like it will not be boring.
Yeah, like this one feels like a game for people that played an RTS campaign, enjoyed it, and then left it behind. Not like the online competitive scene. You know what game is catered more towards those that are looking at the online competitive scene and has literal Frank Klepacki in it.
Is it the game
Stormgate?
I was gonna ask, is it the game being developed by the guys who helped develop StarCraft 2?
Yes, it is. Frost Giant Studios now.
I'm automatically scared of anything that wants to be competitive.
To give you an idea of how much they want it, I've seen gameplay from an alpha casted with the StarCraft 2 traditional commentary team of Tasteless and Artosis, with StarCraft 2 pros and so on and so forth.
Oh god,
like,
yeah.
They are very much making StarCraft 3 with the numbers filed up.
I'm just going to say this in advance. I hope they succeed, but I'm staying far away from this one.
I think we haven't quite given the right visual, mental image of the casting that Rana mentioned. Tasteless and Artosis, aka Tastosis by the StarCraft community,
exactly,
are such a big part of the StarCraft competitive community that, number one of them is the brother of Day 9, a former pro, and number two,
and literally the guy who suggested to Twitch, hey, have you considered a subscription model? And thus made them millions of money.
Yep. Also, the other guy in the duo has his name as the name of a major StarCraft meme, which is the Artosis Pylon. And number three, both of them were so big in the competitive scene that they would cast games on official Korean television.
Yeah, they've worked for GSL for decades now.
So there are kind of two games trying to be StarCraft 3 out right now, in development right now. The other isn't, as far as we know, isn't going to be released in 2024. It's called Zero Space. That one is kind of aiming more for the campaign crowd and the casual crowd and folks who like the co-op missions in StarCraft 2. Stormgate isn't that. Stormgate is definitely aiming for the competitive crowd.
I mean, it's got Storm in the name, so it's very late Blizzard.
Yep. Yeah, this is it's one I'm cautious for. The visuals haven't quite grabbed my attention yet, and the focus on the competitive scene kind of just bores me because I am not a competitive person. So I'm a bit more excited for Zero Space, but again, that might only come out in 2025, maybe 2026. Who knows? They literally don't even have a year of release plan yet.
It's It looks to me like a game I'm going to have a lot of fun being terrible at.
Yeah, Zero Space definitely. Stormgate,
No, I
yet
was
to be
talking
seen.
about Stormgate for myself.
For me, I think Stormgate's yet to be seen. I don't do ranked ladder in games, so if that's the focus of Stormgate, I probably know about.
I got to silver once in StarCraft 2.
Dude,
So
I once
I'm basically a huge deal.
look. There was one time where I spent like months without playing, and I came back and I tried to go for the ladder, and somehow I got paired with only people who were worse than me, so I won all 5 placement matches, and I got on platinum.
Okay, big shot.
I lost like 5 matches in a row in less than 3 minutes, I think. And I went, nope,
incredible.
I'm out. I'm not playing competitive anymore. No more ladder for me. But yeah.
Anyway, musically speaking, conveniently on their very Steam page, Stormgate has a part of the video which is explicitly about the music for one of their factions, the Infernals, which is covered, as we said, by Frank Lepaki. And there's a few insight on the process and the general tone, and it's got this mix of old RTS sensibilities, of course, because Frank Lepaki is literally the first guy that composed music for an RTS game, so that probably helps. But also with the more modern musical image of Hellblade, influenced by things like Mick Gordon, and we have this very much crossing of timelines that's going to give some nice music stuff.
And that actually brings me to a question since you bring him up. Is there any word on a game that Mick Gordon is working on? Because it has been a while
Not
for
that
him.
I know of.
Drat.
I know he's doing some project, but I don't think they're video game related.
He is listed on Wikipedia as audio director for a game called Routine that to be announced when it's gonna release.
Oh yeah, this one. It's a game in a space station, so his work should reference more like his work from Prey and the like, but yeah, this one is we don't know where it comes out. It's been announced a while ago, and it's been delayed multiple times because pandemic.
Yeah, that's a big oof, and we're reaching the anniversary of his previous project, which was Atomic Heart. So he is still in the industry apparently. We'll see if that keeps on going. Just so for folks afraid that he wouldn't be in the gaming industry after Doom Eternal, it looks like he is.
Good.
He is more than his Doom work.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He is more than id Software and Bethesda.
Yeah,
and
I've got to be honest, when we did our retrospective on him, I found his Doom work to be among my least favorite of his work. He is so capable of so much better stuff.
I love his KI work, and Killer Instinct released a patch for their 10th anniversary a few weeks ago.
Nice.
Yep, and with that patch, they Microsoft did their cheeky thing where they softly re-release the game by just adding a new subtitle to it. So it's on Game Pass under, I think, Anniversary Edition or something.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which is the same game it's always been, but...
If one of you wanna just punch some faces, break some combos, and be bad for a few minutes, hit me up.
I might take you up on that.
Sounds great. I may not have a good Shin Hisako, but I have one. And a TJ combo. But anyway, let's move on to, let's say, Eddie, Last Epoch.
Yeah, this one we actually have a more concrete release date because they literally have the date of release. It's going to be right in the middle of February. And this is a game I've brought up before. I've said it was shaping to be my favorite ARPG of all time, even though it was still in early access, and that was like a year ago. Though I'm very excited for the result.
Yeah, and as for myself, I played a little bit in early access twice, enjoyed it, and was like, Falconer looks like an interesting sub-job. I think I'm going to wait for this release. So they've released over the course of the game all like 14 of the 15 sub-jobs available, the very last one being the one that I was interested in.
Yeah, they're missing two. They call it
there's
class
also
masters right
like
now.
Warlock, I think.
Yes, I think that's.
Yeah, the
they released Rune
specialty
Master.
of cultist and Falconer.
Yeah, because they were missing 3, but they released Rune Master in late 2023, so they're missing 2 right now. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and this, as I mentioned before, this is very much an ARPG that draws inspirations for its gameplay from Path of Exile, but it's way more approachable.
Oh,
and the plot is it exists. It is Chrono Trigger if it was bad. That's the plot.
Yeah, like the plot is more like, hey, you have a skill tree for each of the skills you want to use. Oh wait, that wasn't plot. Don't care. That's still the most interesting part.
Yeah, pretty much. It's that, and then everything else is, hey, remember when Chrono Trigger had time travel and 3 Elder Sages? Let's do that too. Oh, also,
yes,
you have to save a princess who's somehow related to this whole thing, and her pendant of sorts can help you time travel.
And now
I too like Final Fantasy 13 too.
Yeah,
there was no princess in 13 too?
There wasn't.
Okay, I'm
there
like,
was
wait a minute.
In Chrono Trigger.
Yes, but he said 13 too, so I'm like, there wasn't a princess in that game.
Yeah, there wasn't, that I remember.
Yeah, but basically these guys are making a love letter to their favorite RPGs in all genres, and it's coming in the form of a dungeon crawler ARPG in the veins of Path of Exile and Diablo. And sound-wise, it's been improving a lot through early access. Right now we're going through a rather dry period when it comes to updates because they are testing everything with a closed audience to the maximum to make sure it has as few bugs as possible when it releases about a month from now.
It's like they want to release a game that works or something.
Clearly, they don't work at Bethesda. But yeah,
to be fair, Starfield was the most polished game they ever released.
It's still pretty broken, but yes, they actually did more QA work than I think they ever have on any game they've developed.
And I may not like their games, but I'm willing to give credit where credit is due.
But yeah.
Anyway,
I'm kind of looking forward for the soundtrack. Like I said, it's improved over the course of early access. In the very beginning, I didn't really like the first 2 tracks. Very generic background, action-y fantasy stuff. But it's improved. I've enjoyed the more esoteric sounding, let's say, songs that they've brought up in more recent patches. I enjoy what they did with the background theme for the End of Time, because of course they have a hub called the End of Time. It is heavily influenced by Chrono Trigger, as I mentioned. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what they're gonna do with this more ambience heavy sound. It's usually a solid approach for an ARPG soundtrack, because you can't really predict how many mobs will be in a place because people will play at different difficulties. So yeah, it helps reinforce the vibe of the game, and I'm looking forward to that because it's been improving with every new patch.
All right. Now then, let's move on to one that hasn't been confirmed as to when it releases, or if it releases in 2024, but at this point I'm really hoping for it, which is Dream Settler, the spiritual sequel to Hypnospace Outlaw, which was a cornucopia of weird music, and I love my weird music.
There's something to be said about weird music. I definitely appreciate it when composers try stuff as opposed to not trying stuff.
Yeah, and in that case, the stuff in question was retro GeoCity score, internet page illustrations. And Dream Settler is going to be a little bit later. It's more going to be like early 2000s. But that's still a vibe. Less of a musical vibe that I can immediately grasp at the top of my head. So I wonder how they'll negotiate that. But I'm looking forward to good stuff, because even if there isn't music for each and every single web page, there's likely going to be like a fake Winamp with weird skins you can have and MP3s you can collect on some LimeWire equivalent.
Oh, I remember you talking about this. This sounds familiar now. Okay, that was this game.
Yeah, and I'm going to be looking forward to that. Because as they've demonstrated with the Doom clone they released last year, Slayers X, which is essentially the video game one of the characters from Hypnospace Outlaw made 20 years later in universe. They can expand on a theme. In this case, the theme being terrible Linkin Park impersonations.
Please tell me it has a version of MySpace.
I'm hoping it does for Dream Settler. That is.
Yeah, you can't aim for early 2000s internet and Linkin Park and not have edgy MySpace pages that play Linkin Park in the background.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is starting to sound like something I might get into. What's the actual gameplay loop here? Like, did we talk about that at all?
We don't know for this one. In the previous one, the way it worked is that you were essentially an internet moderator working for the Microsoft equivalent. And you had assignments like finding a specific piece of copyrighted material and banning the images corresponding to that. And then you had the angry reaction of people raging at you, where you couldn't interact with them directly, and then investigating cases of harassment, which then expand to a broader conspiracy that has you look at the internet for an archival project 20 years later, eventually.
Yeah, Dream Settler, based on the description on Steam, sounds like it's gonna be a similar thing. The main blurb says, "SleepNet is where dreams are literally made, but sometimes dreams need a little help, and that's where you come in. They say a private eye never sleeps, but to crack these cases open, you need to be out cold."
Okay, so maybe not the moderation aspect, but definitely the investigation part, which was honestly thrilling in Hypnospace Outlaw. Like, it goes places you don't necessarily expect. You have a potential list of characters that can die or live depending on your actions, even though you're an internet moderator.
Yep.
So yeah, fun times.
I have yet to play the first game. It is on Game Pass. It is on my backlog. But
they even released a creation kit to make your own pages in Hypnospace Outlaw.
Huh.
That's
fun.
That's neat.
That's cute, yeah.
Yeah. Then, more quickly, Earth Defense Force 6, which we are definitely going to play, Galen.
Oh, yes, we are.
Already released in Japan last year, but they take a bit of a time to localize it. But it's going to release early this year.
Which one did we play before? 4.1?
4.1.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay.
Yeah. So it's going to be 2 games gap, and it's going to be shinier, it's going to be more explodey, and it's going to have music that will make you feel like you in the cheesiest action movie ever. As it should be.
That's kind of what Earth Defense Force is all about.
Exactly. Now then, let's talk Infinite 12.
I mean, as we've learned towards the Year of the Dragon, this franchise has some incredible music. To the point where I feel like Judgment, which contains 2 of my favorite songs of the entire franchise, I would argue is the weakest overall soundtrack in the franchise. That says a lot about the quality of this franchise and the music. The team of Hidenori Shoji, Saori Yoshida, Hid Lunch, and the others have been pretty consistently knocking it out of the park for, 15, 20 years now? I have nothing but faith that this will be a great soundtrack.
I have more than faith about that because, so they released a demo in a weird way.
You have to beat a side game. I'm not thrilled with that.
Yeah, like, to access the demo of Infinite 12, you have to finish Like a Dragon Gaiden.
Yeah,
That's weird.
That is very weird. I don't like that. I'm just going to come out and say no. Please let us enjoy the demo without that caveat. I don't mind.
The demos, actually, there's 2 of them. One that's more story-focused, and the other that's more about the free roam. And, the thing is that people have looked into the demo a bit closer, and have data mined like 60 tracks from the soundtrack, which is why I pointedly haven't looked for them. Because I don't want to get spoiled on some things, and, but, like, the battle theme is, for Hawaii, is very much in the demo and accessible in-game, and it's a fun one, and it starts without the kind of droning softness than the Yokohama battle theme starts with. So...
Oh, not the Yokohama battle theme again.
It's probably going to be a little bit less exhausting 80 hours in.
I hope so. Now, you did see some... I remember you talking about this. You did see there was, like, a music thing on Ichiban's phone in this game that wasn't active for the demo. So I'm hoping that also helps alleviate it if we can actually, like, have some music settings or a battle music randomizer.
Yes,
I've mentioned...
I've looked at the description of DLCs, and it seems to be confirmed that this will be a thing. But you can, at the very least, like, listen to your phone music on the Segway. The thing that makes me the most curious is how they're going to handle the Amon Fight theme, because they went in a variety of directions recently, and I'm not sure if we're going to get a more active Fiercest Warrior this time, or callbacks to previous titles, or something else.
I mean...
Curious what it'll end up with.
I do hope that at least the main line does continue with Fiercest Warrior, as I feel like that has become a series tradition. But I'm kind of cool with the spin-offs going in other directions. Like, I know that Last Assassin 14 had nothing to do with it. I know that the song we're getting in Lost Judgment, though I haven't heard it yet myself, actually has some notes from Hear This in the Game, which was the album theme from Yakuza 3 and 4. And then I know that the Blood Drunk Master from Kaido Files has its own music, and I don't know about Gaiden at all. I've done everything I can to avoid spoilers of the soundtrack on that one, so I'll find out when I start playing it, I guess, question mark?
And I know that, but won't say a thing.
Can you at least tell me if it's a Fiercest Warrior remix? I'm willing to hear that.
It's a Fiercest Warrior.
Okay. Okay, maybe they're just limiting it to... No, they're not limiting it to Kiryu's story, because 7 was not Kiryu's story.
Yes.
Whatever, I'm glad they're not letting go of the song, but I'm also glad they are branching out, at least in Judgment. I think that's a good play for them. Because Last Assassin 14 is a great song, and I'm glad we got it.
Indeed. Now then, speaking about continuing things that have been good in the past, Hades 2 hasn't been confirmed for 2024, but I hope that at least be an early access availabilities for this year. And really looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as far as we know, it's sort of half confirmed that 2024 will have early access. I personally am gonna wait for the full release because I burn out on games real fast. I'm the kind of guy who starts a game, goes really hard into it for a few weeks, and then stops and doesn't touch it again. And I don't want that to happen before the full story.
Yeah,
but
it's
which is why you're not going to play the release version of Last Epoch, right?
That's the one exception. Every rule has exceptions, and Last Epoch is the exception that proves that rule. But I don't want to risk it happening with Hades 2.
Yeah,
Hades 1 is
entirely fair, joking aside.
Yeah, Hades 1 is in my possibly top 5 games of all time, and a big part of it is the story. I just love how Supergiant wrote their version of the Greek myth. Plus, the soundtrack is amazing. The gameplay loop is, of course, very, very fun. So, I really want to see the final version. Let's not
brush over the soundtrack being amazing, because that's kind of our thing.
Yeah. That's the whole point of the show, I remind you.
And so, I imagine they'll have maybe a bit of a colder tone, actually, because, Zagreus is this very impetuous character, and I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but thank you. Melinoe looks to be colder and more still with a mission, very much so, but maybe with a colder demeanor, and I imagine that's going to be translated at least on some tracks on some level.
I mean, Darren Korb is a good enough composer that it would not surprise me. But I do still think just having nothing... I don't want to say anything because I know nothing about the soundtrack yet. But I'm sure it'll translate on some level, but I hope it's not only that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and the hope is kind of supported by the fact that they've done game before Hades, and they've shown that they can do different styles very well.
I feel it's very likely that we'll hear not as many guitars as we did on the first Hades, but more synths to give a more sort of magical vibe. Because Melinoe...
That's what I imagine.
Yeah, between their art of Melinoe that we've seen and her identity in mythology as being as having characteristics of both a moon goddess of sorts and a goddess of magic, like Hecate, who seems to be her mentor in the new game. I imagine we'll get a lot of synths, a lot of theremin, maybe.
I mean, that's kind of the thing with the franchise, so that doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah, but I mean, more that and less the guitars, because the first Hades did get hard on guitars,
or maybe
as you went
in
through.
Equal quantities, but inverted, where the more synthy sound take the forefront with the guitars in the background instead of the opposite in the first Hades. Something like that would, I feel, work and be really enjoyable.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
Either way, it's almost certainly gonna be really, really good.
Yeah. Then we have Windblown, which is a game that I think is going to release in 2024. Again, not certain, and I know very little to close to nothing about it, but it's made by the team that made Dead Cells, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of curiosity at least. And
Fair
they've
enough.
shown they can give a lot of love to the soundtrack, what with the Castlevania expansion for Dead Cells in particular, where they've done like 2 entire soundtracks because they got Castlevania inspiration so much and they decided to really give credit. And so here it's going to be a bit of a different tone, bit of a different perspective, and with a bit more experience from the composer. I imagine it's going to be an interesting take.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that it's more co-op focused, I hope they won't fall into the trap of making it more subdued because of that.
I mean, if there's one thing we've seen from RoboQuest, you could absolutely have an absolute monster of a soundtrack and still have a satisfying co-op experience.
100% agree.
Has it been confirmed that Johan Lauland will be back to compose the soundtrack?
I don't think it's been Actually, let me just check the Steam page real quick.
Because like with Supergiant, they've done enough games that we can expect that to be true, that they will simply bring back the same composers. But I don't think Motion Twin has that many games under their belt.
Yeah, however, they have this flat corporate structure where every part of the company is getting the same share and the same importance in the creative process. And so I imagine that the composer being part of it means that he is still on board. No information on that on the Steam page, so I don't know for sure. But I hope that's still the case because he does a lot of good work.
Yeah, I was gonna say we can hope because the dude is really good on Dead Cells, and he has some of the most creative versions of Castlevania tracks in his take on them for the Return to Castlevania expansion.
Yeah, all while being able to make tracks like the prison level track, which you hear hundreds of times and still don't get tired of.
Thankfully.
Yeah. Now then, let's move to some insights on the islands we're in.
Yeah, this game, this took me by surprise. Islands of Insight. A few YouTubers in the puzzle sphere, let's say, have gotten early access to the game in 2023, sort of mid 2023. And one of them is the YouTuber I mention from time to time as being one that I follow called Aliens Rock. And the game idea just fascinates me. It's an open world MMO puzzler.
Yeah, like the only comparable example I can think of would be The Secret World.
It just seems... The idea seems fascinating. I haven't heard anything about this game, but I should probably check out some footage of it.
It kind of feels like if you put The Witness and Talos Principle together and made it open world and with some
and then
RPG
gave
elements.
you a Breath of the Wild style wind glider for good measure.
Insane. I kind of love that, but I also think I might hate that. We'll see. That one's definitely going to get a we'll see from me.
Yeah, and between that and Palia that released last year as well, it's interesting to see teams trained to do takes of the MMO genre that not only don't really focus, but outright don't have combat.
Yeah, this one is really like, if you had just told me the idea behind Islands of Insight, I would just go, nah, this cannot work. But then I saw those gameplay videos, and my god, it looks fascinating. I'm sure I'm gonna hate like a third of the puzzle types, But even if I only enjoy 2/3 of them, that's already a lot of puzzles.
Yeah, like I will seek help for any and every sliding puzzles there are.
Yep,
They are my nemesis.
Those will be puzzles I'll be just running for YouTube guides. But
Great, then I won't ask for your help. Good to know.
I am all for those. Those match 4 puzzles, match 3, match 4. I suck at that.
Oh, no, those I'm okay with. But anyway, musically, do you have any insight on what that will have?
I don't think much has been shown thus far. I think it's mostly just a couple tracks that play in the open world and puzzles. It seemed to me
honestly, they can get away with very little.
Yeah, the world is huge based on what I've seen. They do
but
need
at
some
the
variety.
same time, given the whole puzzling aspect, giving you time to focus on that can work. Although, let's not forget that a game like Professor Layton has an amazing soundtrack, so clearly there are some ways to make a rich soundtrack that gets the brain cage rolling.
I think the key is on the type of puzzle. I think with Professor Layton, for example, it's more of sort of detective deduction-y type stuff. Islands of Insight is like I said, Talos Principle, like The Witness. It doesn't literally have Sudoku, but it could have. It would fit just perfectly right in. So I think it's gonna be more sort of an ethereal vibe in general, which is the sort of thing that I am known for enjoying in this podcast. So
right, well.
I imagine it's gonna be the sort of thing that is designed to not necessarily be memorable. You might not be humming this in your real life, so to speak, but it's there. It's non-intrusive, but it's very pleasant. That's how I think the soundtrack will end up going. But so far we don't have too much music to listen to and have an idea for it. And it doesn't help that the gameplay videos we have are mostly YouTubers playing the game, and so they have their voice over it, and you can't hear in detail.
All right. Speaking of MMOs, I realized that in the little pre-selection we've made, none of us put Destiny 2 there since they fired the composer in the drastic downsizing where they also delayed the next expansion by 2 months.
I mean,
so
the composer has finished. Composers have finished their work for the next expansion, which is the Final Shape. So
it will still be their work then.
Yes, it's their final work at Bungie.
I see.
For 2 of them, the rest of the team remains, but 2 of the composers have at least.
Then this will be a bittersweet listen.
Yeah, I didn't put in my pre-recording list of games I'm looking forward to, mostly because I'm not sure I will play it yet.
Yeah.
It's coming out in June, if I recall correctly. It was supposed to come out in February, I think, but got pushed out after the layoffs. So I'm still deciding because I'm like 50% is burnout, 50% is, oh god, I hate Bungie so much right now. So I haven't been playing the game for about 4 months.
Entirely justifiable.
Yeah, for sure.
So between all that, I'm still deciding on whether I want to buy the expansion.
Yeah, but I just wanted to address that, at least.
Like, there is a solid chance I will be playing it, so don't be surprised if I do mention it on now play in the future, because it is the final chapter of the story. I might just buy it to see through. But right now, it's in the air. But the soundtrack will be by at least composers we know already as being good composers. Whatever comes after that from Bungie, that is the unknown.
Yeah,
indeed. Then we have Tekken 8 that will release this month, I believe, on the 27th or 28th. And so far, it hasn't had a musical identity as strong as Tekken 7. But it's going in the continuity with more synths that you can shake stick at, and nothing has really left a strong impression so far. But we haven't seen all the stages yet. We don't really know what's in the full version yet. We don't know if there are like boss tracks in the campaign when the full game releases or so on. So curious about that. But for now, we don't have the track that tells me, yes, that's in the line of a series that has some great soundtrack. So far, it's just good stuff.
On the one hand, that's a bit of a shame, but on the other hand, not every studio can be Arc System Works.
Yeah.
Not fair. Every studio has a Daisuke Iwatari at hand.
Exactly.
My knowledge of the Tekken soundtrack is limited to, this is what Keiichi Okabe worked with before he started working with Taro Hyoko, and his work on it was never particularly impressive?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same space. I'm happy to hear that Tekken 7 had a cool identity to its sound, but generally my knowledge of its music is very limited.
Here is my true relationship with the entirety of the Tekken franchise's soundtrack. Number 1, Tekken 3, I think it had one cool intro music. It ran out at the arcade and go, and it's great. 2, the yodeling song in Tekken 5 or 6.
Yep.
I remember that one.
Amazing. Yep. 3, Tekken 7. Great choice of musical identity with tracks that are electronic and chill, as much as a fighting game soundtrack can be for the first rounds, and in the final rounds they go all the way hardcore in a way that managed to elevate even ancient track they remixed for guest fighters like Noctis or Geese Howard.
Wait, Geese Howard was Tekken 8?
Tekken 7.
Tekken 7, right. But Geese Howard, isn't he SNK? Isn't that a different...
Yes.
Okay. I'm like, wait, I
he
thought
was
that was
a guest character.
Franchise. Got it. Yeah, no, when you said that, yes, I realized what that meant, but that was still like,
yeah,
I thought he was
which is why I mentioned him in the same breath as Noctis from Final Fantasy 15.
I didn't actually hear you say that, as weird as that is. Like, that didn't register in my brain the same way.
On a side note, I do want to say I'm very happy to realize that we've started the year with an official Ranakel beatboxing bit.
Yep.
Excellent.
It wouldn't be a new year if we didn't have that.
Yep. It has officially started now.
Yep. 15 days later, but we have started the year officially now.
Good. Next, Dragon's Dogma 2 also releasing pretty soon, and it's gonna have some nice fantasy stuff, and I wonder if they're going to do something in that line for the main menu theme, or if they're going to go all the way similar to the original Dragon's Dogma for the main menu music, which was just a good pop song with lyrics that they eventually had to remove for the definitive edition because of licensing issues.
That explains why I didn't hear that, because I only played the definitive version.
Yeah, Into 3 was only in the original releases of Dragon's Dogma. And whatever they choose, I hope they get their licensing in order. Thank you very much, Capcom.
Yeah,
looking forward to the music release for this game. And for Monster Hunter Wilds, but we don't know if it's going to be 2024, so haven't talked about that.
at the very least, it feels like Capcom's been getting better with their music, uh, in every sense, like
Yeah,
availability, compositions, licensing.
there's a reason why Virgil's theme from Devil May Cry 5 has like 116 million listens on YouTube.
They are one of the very few studios from Japan that have almost everything from their catalog available on Spotify. Like you can hear to the soundtrack to the first Mega Man there.
Okay,
So
I appreciate.
They've been getting good.
Capcom has a weirdly, like, I don't want to say weirdly. I hate that I'm saying weirdly here, but it's almost weirdly. But they're a weirdly fan-forward company, I've noticed.
Surprisingly,
They
maybe?
had a really bad period where they were just horrible, and it feels like somebody decided to put some boot up some butts and kick the company into gear for the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had that weird phase where a lot of Japanese studios were doing this, but Capcom was the worst, where they really wanted to be westernized in some way, like they did DMC, the intended reboot for Devil May Cry. They did the
that
Dead
reboot.
Rising.
The monetization pay to win for Street Fighter X Tekken.
Mm-hmm.
The release roster for Street Fighter 5 that had like 8 characters.
Yeah, they kept releasing what's the franchise? Dead Rising?
Yeah.
A franchise that after the first game lost its identity completely. So they had a really bad phase where they had awful monetization policies, and they were making games that were forcibly westernized. The Bionic Commando was another example of that.
Yeah, and
but they've been
now
picking their...
they've healed their reputation enough that a Devil May Cry mobile game released in the West this month, and it's not raising a stink.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that a big part of that is how they dealt with Rockman X Dive, where they
did that excellently. Street Fighter 6's release was incredible. They do have those issues of overpriced DLCs, but it's purely for cosmetics, so it's fine. And they've cleaned up their act, and I'm happy for that.
For sure.
Looking forward to a cleaned up Dragon's Dogma 2.
All I can say now is when are we getting Mega Man X9?
Yeah. Oh, Legend 3. If we're gonna go there.
Don't. Move on. Abort topic.
Okay, let's talk about Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes then.
Yeah, let's move from one Japanese company that used to be awful to one that is awful to the point ex-employees are leaving and making their own games that are just previous franchises with the numbers filed off.
Exactly.
Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes is basically Suikoden 6. Just like how Bloodstain was basically Castlevania Sorrow 3.
Yeah.
But it's a franchise I've loved ever since I first learned of it back in the late 2000s. I was a bit late to it. And I'm happy to hear it's coming back. They had a side game that came out, which was
Rising.
Weird. Yeah, is Eiyuden Chronicles Rising.
Yeah, it had something about the gameplay and the reactivity of it didn't gel with me at all.
Yeah, it was a side-scrolling action adventure where the combat felt really like Electric Punch. So it wasn't impactful at all.
It wasn't as much of a hit as the 8-bit version of Bloodstained that was good enough they made a sequel just because it's good.
It basically kind of, like, the game itself on a whole, it looked beautiful. But the character animations and the combat felt like I was playing a Flash game.
Yes.
But there was a side-scrolling action-adventure side game the main game, Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, is a turn-based RPG in the same vein as Suikoden. So,
and you know what's the best part? The composers are Michiko Naruke of Wild Arts fame and Motoi Sakuraba mentioned!
Oh, there he is. And our first meme of the year has begun.
The year has officially begun between that and the beatboxing.
Exactly.
Year of the Dragon, my ass. Year of the Ranakel. Year of the Duck.
Every year is year of the Ranakel.
Fair. But yeah, there's some pedigree in Eiyuden Chronicle, and I've enjoyed the soundtrack to the Suikoden franchise, at least the games that I've managed to play.
And it's going to be different because they weren't composers for Suikoden. But I'm looking forward to what these two composers can do. Obviously, they have a lot of experience in JRPGs.
Yeah. And while Eiyuden Chronicle Rising was a bit of a misstep, I'd say, and the soundtrack was okay. It wasn't memorable, but it worked for the environment it played in. I imagine a big JRPG would demand some more impressive outing by the composers. So I'm looking forward to what they come up with.
Very much so. Now let's stay in the area of RPGs, starting with Persona 3 Reloaded. Or actually just Reload. And I believe there's going to be remixes.
I'm sorry, I need to just point this out. You're excited for Sakuraba, but Sakuraba has not given me anything to be excited over for years now. I'm not sure his contribution, he phones in his soundtracks these days. I don't think any of us here can really argue that point. The closest thing he had to good was Valkyrie Elysium, and that was at least passable, but far, far, far from his prior excellent work back in the 90s and 2000s.
I mean, we'll see if his spark can be reignited, if working in tandem with another composer, they can manage to have their styles interact in interesting ways. Also, I would mention that his work on Dark Souls was very interesting.
It was, but that was his last, I would say, really good solo soundtrack. I will say that he did, in Tales of Hysteria, work with Goshina, and it was great, but I don't know. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Maybe collaborating will help light a fire under his butt, but...
I think it's also worth noting that I believe this is his first work outside of the AAA environment in a while, because Eiyuden Chronicle was kickstarted.
He works on just about whenever the heck he feels like.
Okay, fair. But here's hoping that between being outside of the AAA environment and working with another person rather than entirely alone, he comes out with his best.
Indeed. Now then, back to Persona 3 Reload. And given that the original Persona 3 was this amazing soundtrack from end to end.
Oh yeah. Total classic soundtrack.
Yeah. I'm not a Persona 3 fan myself. I haven't really played the game, and the things I've seen. Honestly, I'm happy the game re-releases, even though I would have appreciated the at least some lip service given to the alternate protagonist they did for one of the re-releases.
Yeah. And I think the answer is also not included, so we're not getting much Fest content, I believe I've heard as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this one. As a long-time Shin Megami Tensei fan.
It's definitely going to be a very different way to play, kind of a way to bring the Persona 5 fans to Persona 3.
Now, if only they could do that with the earlier Personas, and remember, those exist.
Yes. Preach, my friend.
I'm sorry. Every time, like, I know I'm kind of switching gears here, but when I was playing Persona 5 Strikers or Royal...
This is important.
Every time Persona 2 Innocent Sins battle music came on, I was jamming out.
Yeah.
More people need to hear this song, and, you know, I've said this before during Year of the Dragon, and I will say it here. My dream game is probably the Infinite Wealth team doing a full remake of the Persona 2 duology. I want to see that happen.
Oh, yeah. That would be incredible.
There needs to be more love for the Persona games before 3, because those were pretty... I don't want to say they were pretty good. They had some incredible ideas, and I feel like those ideas deserve to be brought into the modern day with the knowledge of 20 years of development behind them.
Yeah.
Sadly, I don't have much to speak here, because there are only two things I know about the Persona franchise. The first is, of course, it has amazing music. I've listened to Beneath the Mask a lot for someone who hasn't played the game. And the only other thing I know... Yeah, it is. And the only other thing I know about Persona is that it's a franchise that doesn't stay on the Game Pass for very long. Thanks for that. I was planning on playing Persona 5, but then it left the Game Pass in like a month of being added to it.
A shame. Oh yeah, but my point that I wanted to make before was that even though Persona 3 as a game isn't my favorite of the whole Persona series, its soundtrack is probably the one with the most iconic tracks, as far as I'm concerned.
I still think, while there are some great songs on it, Persona 5 soundtrack was ultimately fairly weak. So I'm definitely of the Persona 3 probably has the most standout of the Persona series when it comes to music, and everything else is kind of a derivative of that.
Yeah. So there are a lot of room to give some of those tracks some interesting spins, and I'm looking forward to that.
For sure.
Just like I am looking forward to what they're going to do with Metaphor Refantasio. The fantasy Persona.
Right. Yeah, I have no idea. This is definitely outside of Shoji Meguro's usual wheelhouse. But,
yeah.
Is he composing on this one?
I think he is.
Okay.
And it's so weird because it's not like the franchise as a whole hasn't done fantasy games before, but generally they've been like Shin Megami Tensei games.
Yeah, usually, like, SMT5 is definitely a fantasy game, but it's also a very urban fantasy game.
Yeah.
I don't know much about this, but it sounds like you're describing it as outright fantasy.
Outright fantasy, yes. Like, it's not pre-apocalyptic Earth or post-apocalyptic Earth or anything related to cultures we know. It's just its own setting.
I'd be very interested to see how that plays out. It's definitely far outside their normal... It's outside their box. They're doing something new here.
Which is a good thing to say. I wouldn't want them to spin their wheels. And, like, it also has the vibe of them basically finding excuses to have a engine and use it for multiple projects at a time to pay for it. Because I believe it's the same engine for Persona 3 Reload and this one, and I wouldn't be surprised if they use it for Persona 6 as well. Because they're going to release a 6 one day. You cannot milk Persona 5 endlessly, Atlas. Listen to me. You cannot. I know you want to, but you can't.
Now you're just daring them.
If they want to make another Strikers, they can milk it as much as they want. Other than that, I'm fairly trepidatious. I've heard not very good things about Tactica.
You can have your Strikers if I can have my Persona 5 Ultimax with the characters for Persona 4 and 3 as well in it.
Honestly,
that would be fun.
And a Maya cameo.
I just can't wait for Atlas to pull a 1990s Capcom and do Persona 5 Soccer.
They would. Anyway, different setting, different pace, different tone. I hope they use that opportunity to go in different places musically as a result.
It'd be nice. It'd be nice to see. I don't know how much range Shoji Meguro really has. That's the trick. He's never expanded on his range in any meaningful way. It's always been rock or rock-adjacent J-pop throughout his entire career, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to hear what, if anything, he can accomplish with this.
Indeed. Then, Homeworld 3.
I know nothing about this.
The game has already had some previews that went out, and I haven't listened to what could be there, so I'm purely basing it on the legacy of the franchise, which goes with some interesting tracks. It goes with some very... it's a sci-fi franchise where they go for a very... tracks that reflect the cultures from the nomadic peoples that are represented in this space. And as a result, there are a lot of high points in the campaign, especially, that I hope will have musically for this game too.
I don't really have much to add to that.
Yeah,
I
mostly just know Homeworld by osmosis because it's sort of one of those big names that come up when people talk about sci-fi strategy games.
It has an actual third dimension. That's what I know about it. You can go up and down.
Indeed. You can actually do tactics that make use of the fact you are in a three-dimensional plane in space. And that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Plus, there's this persistent aspect of the campaign where units you build at the end of a mission go back into the mothership to move on to the next part, which is why I wasn't aware before you've mentioned it in pre-production that there was a roguelite mode, but it makes perfect sense given the way the campaign of the previous game was shaped.
Yeah. I watched Potato and Spiff play it. Potato McWhiskey and the Spiffing Brit. Oh, that's why I couldn't find Spiff's video, because it was a stream, not an edited video. I was looking in the wrong section. I was wondering, did he take it down? No, I'm just looking in the wrong... that just hit me. My coffee's finally kicking in, if you haven't noticed.
Excellent.
It is early in Hawaii right now.
It's about 10:20.
For Galen standards.
Not...
No,
really?
There's been a lot of game soundtracks we hope would be good. The next one, FF7 Rebirth, is one where I'm almost at this point willing to say no will be good.
Yeah, I mean, given how good Remakes was, and given the remixes it's building off of...
everything they've showed us so far gives reasons to be optimistic about it.
This is one that I would almost say maybe by the soundtrack sight unseen. How could it possibly be bad?
Yeah,
absolutely.
With everything else, we're hoping the soundtrack will be good. We're hoping they won't screw up the pooch. What we haven't heard yet.
And they've given no real reason to suspect they will.
Yeah, the only thing I'm not thrilled with when it comes to that franchise is the combat. That has nothing to do with the music.
Yeah, as a reminder, the soundtrack was so good that before I played the game, I understood the difference in tonality between it and the original by listening to one track.
That's impressive.
And mentioning what it made me think on this very podcast.
I remember that.
Yes.
That stands in my mind as he does not know how on the nose he is on that one.
Yeah. I sure didn't.
Yeah, I the other thing I remember, this was off stream, is when you beat FF7 Remake, you're like, I have thoughts, and my exact response is, good or bad, if you didn't have thoughts, I'd be concerned. If you were just like, yeah, that was alright, that would actually make me a lot more concerned than if you had thoughts one way or the other, so it's just one of those games.
Yeah, it is.
I totally get the people who don't like it.
Absolutely.
But I do not understand that people who think, meh, I don't care. Like, what?
Yes.
How does that work?
Like, they had a task that was almost too big to be just done correctly.
Yeah.
Being remake FF7. And so they went, okay, we're going to talk in some subtext about that during the narrative of the game.
Yeah. It was impressive, and I do not. It's probably all over the internet by now, especially given Rebirth coming out. I still don't want to talk about the plot twist, as I personally find it kind of sacred.
Yes.
But I will say that I like something from the earliest previews made me wonder about that all right out of the gate. I'm like, why is this happening to this particular character? There's no reason to do that unless ...
Yeah, because they've really given reasons to put one of a spoiler that was almost on the level of Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Yeah.
And to put it into question again.
Yes. And
because they do think like Eddie, have you played the FF7 remake?
Nope.
Okay. To give you an idea of what they do in the game, I won't say why, I won't say who, but somebody just out of the blue for no reason, in a way that absolutely wasn't there in the original, shoots one of the main party members in the chest in a cutscene and kills him. And then he gets unkilled.
I hate to talk about it on this, but my theory of this is a lot of this is happening is that so many people are more powerful than they were in the original game. And that's actually written into the story. One character has his death event happen exactly as it did, and unlike in the first game, he gets up and walks that off.
Yeah.
So, like, they almost... I don't want to say why or what the ramifications thereof is, but let's just say the difference in power level seems to be written into the subtext of the story, which is actually super cool.
Yeah. And remind me, what was the character, the playable character in the first game you thought was the most powerful when you mained it?
Tifa.
Oh.
Did I?
Ah, right.
I was comboing with her constantly. I loved that.
Yeah, no. That was me misremembering a bit about how Arif had this very healer-like attitude in the original, but turned into an absolute monster of a nuker in this one.
Oh yeah, no, she's definitely the second most. I hate the fact that on my playthrough, Cloud was like the character I like playing as the least. But yeah, no, Aerith got a major power upgrade.
And again, this is a matter of style because he's the one I like playing the most.
Yeah, definitely a matter of style.
Yeah.
I was too much of a fan of comboing with Tifa, and yeah, as you said, Aerith's range bombing, and even Barrett shooting things really good.
Yeah.
But
let's move on now, or else we're going
to be talking about FF7 all day.
Yes. And we'll talk plenty when it releases, I imagine. Now then, Unicorn Overlord.
This is by Vanillaware, who did Dragon's Crown and Odin Sphere, and I'm sure there's other games in there.
Yep. But I'd say Dragon's Crown and Odin Sphere are the two.
Those are the two most people know.
Yeah.
I know that Hitoshi Sakimoto worked on Odin Sphere. I don't know if he's worked with the franchise, with the developer since, but given that this is a tactics game, I feel like his presence would be welcome here. Do we know if he's on the soundtrack?
The one in charge of the soundtrack is one Mitsuhiro Kaneda.
Okay.
Which has worked on some other tactics game before. He was one of the composers and arrangers for Final Fantasy Tactics A2.
Okay.
And he worked on Tekken 6. We've just talked about this franchise before. Not a tactics game, but I thought this and some Metal Slug work both deserves mention. And also, he was one of the arrangers for some Tactics Ogre games, including the latest releases, where he was also a mixing engineer.
So he's like a disciple of Sakamoto, it sounds like.
Sounds like it, yeah.
But not the original article. For better or worse, like, I'm not, like, opposed to this guy.
Yeah. And that makes me more excited for Unicorn Overlord now. I wonder what this disciple can do when he's let to stretch his legs a little.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, disciple, he has been working on soundtracks since 2006. So, you know. But yeah, looking forward to him taking the lead, and clearly he has some knowledge of some of the great games in the genre, so I have reason to be optimistic about that.
Fair enough.
And given that the game will be pretty...
Oh, yeah.
And,
I mean, it's vanillaware. It's going to be pretty.
Exactly. And that it's very clearly inspired by Ogre Battle, that's going to be interesting. Next, let's see. Let's talk Rise of the Golden Idol. What about its soundtrack? Because I haven't played the original game.
Neither have I.
Yeah. So often when we're talking about more sort of esoteric sounding soundtracks, I do this thing a lot where I compare them to Dead Can Dance because they're kind of the biggest name in that sort of sound.
Yeah.
No game is best at serving as a comparison point than the case of the Golden Idol, the original, the first game. Especially its first DLC, The Spider of Lanka. So, expect Dead Can Dance style stuff, maybe with less vocals.
Interesting atmospheres then.
Pretty much, it's the entire thing with Case of the Golden Idol was that it was technically a fantasy world, but the nations there are very much analogs for real world nations.
Yes, I see.
With the Spider of Lanka DLC happening in and around a nation that's basically a fictional version of India.
I see.
I imagine the name Lanka does come from Sri Lanka.
That would make sense.
So it's sort of that region of Asia. So I imagine the sequel will sort of be similar. The main core of A Case of the Golden Idol is set in what appears to be basically a mix of France and England. But the plot revolves around a mythical golden idol that comes from this area that's sort of southern, maybe southeastern Asia, which is the golden idol from the game's title.
Right.
So there's a lot of that Indian sound, sometimes Persian-esque vibes, to indicate the nature of this idol, where it comes from, the fact that it's gotten through a lot of travels to reach where it currently is, and all that. So I don't think we know whether Rise of the Golden Idol is a prequel or a sequel. I imagine it's a sequel because the DLCs were prequels. The DLCs to Case of the Golden Idol were prequels to the main story. But either way, it's a new take on the game. From what you've seen on the trailer at the Game Awards, it seems like they're basically taking the same art style from Case of the Golden Idol, which was 2D, and turning it into 3D, but still retaining that same vibe, that same visual style. and I imagine they'll kind of do the same with the music, like take the same style, maybe modernize elements of it here and there. Um, it, it's gonna be interesting. I think that's
Sounds
fair to
interesting
say.
for sure.
Whether it's gonna be good or not, we'll see. But
Here's hoping it is, because that's definitely a game where it's generally spoken of in the same breath as a lot of praises for it.
yeah, and I imagine this is basically them kind of going full circle, because the devs here, they have mentioned how their idea for Case of the Golden Idol was as a spiritual sequel to Return of the Obra Dinn. They aren't the
Yes.
same dev team, but they did specifically design Case of the Golden Idol with that vibe. But it was 2D instead of 3D, and now they're going full circle to 3D as well. So
Was Obra Dinn 3D?
Since Return of the Obra Dinn was well received, I can't imagine this will be bad. But as always, it's up in the air. Don't pre-order games, folks.
Now then, I just wanna slip in a word about Princess Peach Showtime,
I'm
which
not
will
familiar
release
with what this is.
in the. It's a Nintendo game about Princess Peach, which has this very theater-like feeling to it. It's gonna be 3D action, and with costume changes as a main gimmick. And I think my main point of attention when it comes to it was how much Mario Wonder, which released recently, did to flex its soundtrack's abilities.
Right.
And I wonder if they're going to continue with Princess Peach Showtime to do interesting things, to have fun. Given that it's a theater environment, they have a lot of rooms to do interesting stuff, and I hope they take the opportunity instead of playing it safe.
And as we mentioned before, when you brought up Super Mario Wonder in a previous episode, Nintendo does like to play with sort of linking, let's say, the music to what's happening on screen more than a lot of other devs. Going all the way back to the SNES with Yoshi having those drums added to the soundtrack whenever you were riding him.
Exactly.
Right.
So
yeah, in that line, it would make perfect sense to have levels having a bass track that gets altered depending on which costume you're on, for instance.
Yeah.
That would be very
also
cool.
Incorporating theater elements in multiple ways. Help. It might have an opera section. Who knows?
Who knows?
As long as it's better than FF6 Pixels.
Yeah. Now then, let's talk Pennyblade and a bit of Hellbound.
I mean, yeah, so Pennyblade is the spiritual successor to Shadow Hearts as part of a Kickstarted thing, and it finally brings back Yoshitaka Hirota, and I remember a retrospective on Hirota was one of this podcast's first episodes. So
Yep.
I said, please give us more Hirota soundtracks, so they gave me my wish. And then Pennyblade Hellbound is a spin-off. A Hades-like, I guess I would call it, roguelite spin-off. With music by Hirota and Noriyuki Iwadare. Who I remember mostly for their contributions to oh god, what was that? Radiata Stories, I think. Composed alongside hey, guess who? Sakuraba. But this is a guy with a long history behind him. Excuse me. Yeah, what I heard from Hellbound I liked, but obviously it's very early in production, so I wasn't really able to get a handle on what it actually was. I know that Penny Blood is an interesting property so far. I'm willing to see more. We'll see where it gets. So far the soundtrack is decent. Hopefully we get some more interesting stuff as time goes on.
Yes. Like, they have the base of the 1920s atmosphere.
Yes.
Now get crazy with it.
Yes.
Now add the oppressive drums that makes you question your own sanity.
Yes. Please. Just let Hirota do the Hirota thing.
Yes,
I feel
absolutely.
like the real answer is I feel like what I've heard from Hellbound mostly came from Iwadare. But again, it was the very first closed beta release, so like there's a lot of room to grow there.
There's still a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah.
But don't mess it up.
Don't mess it up.
Alright. Now then, Star Wars Outlaws. Let's talk about that, Eddie.
Yeah,
This wasn't in my radar.
Yeah, there's probably a reason why it wasn't in your radar. It's because it's Ubisoft.
That would do it.
That would help.
But yeah, there's been talks of this game for a while now. It's basically an open world game set in the Star Wars universe by Ubisoft. You can travel to a few different planets. I'm not sure how many, and each planet has their open world area. It's not the entire planet, but it's a big enough chunk. And I don't think we know too much about the soundtrack as of right now. Of course, we can expect the hits, like hearing the main theme and having a title crawl. So
and having people trying to be John Williams.
That isn't 100% guaranteed because we've had Mandalorian be a success lately without doing that.
True, absolutely.
And
if they base themselves on that, I will be very happy.
Yeah, the vibe for the game seems partially inspired by Mandalorian because you are not a Jedi, you are not a hero, you are an outlaw. You're kind of sort of.
Oh, so that's why it's called that.
Yeah.
I'm teasing.
Yeah, you're basically female Han Solo from what I could get from the trailers and promotional images. So it's going to that grungier side of Star Wars. We might have a different vibe to the soundtrack. So either way, I'm excited to see what they do with it. There are rumors that they are taking some concepts from the canceled, I believe it was Star Wars 1313 or something. It was the game that LucasArts was working on when Disney bought everything out and canceled it.
Also, I heard some kind of decent things about Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, so that's probably in a similar wheelhouse with a little bit less gathering in the wilds, I imagine.
Maybe a little less free of an exploration because you don't have a single huge hub world, but small bits here and there in different planets. Also, as of this recording, the new Prince of Persia game hasn't been out yet, but by the time it goes live, it will be out.
Oh, yes.
And
there's a new Prince of Persia game?
Yes.
A 2D one in 4 days.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And it's a Metroidvania. And reviews have been very good. Generally speaking, it's at 80% or higher.
I'm down for Hollow Knight of Persia.
If I wasn't deathly afraid of what their DRM is going to do to my computer, I would absolutely play that game, but Ubisoft is terrifying when it comes to that sort of thing. I may check it out on console. Like, I'll put it on the PlayStation or something.
Seems reasonable.
For what it's worth, I haven't had issues, though I do hear horror stories from Trackmania, but that might be on mostly on the studio that Ubisoft bought, which was the actual developer of Trackmania. Those guys seem like douchebags. But yeah,
I mean, they're French. What else do you expect?
Hey,
Ouch!
you're the one
with the
saying
cell
it.
phone. That was a cell phone there. Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm allowed. You're not.
Correct. I didn't say anything.
Well, I specifically mentioned that it was you saying that. Just like
Yes. Correct.
you can't see me, but I'm just like hands up. I'm not involved. It was all him.
Yep. No, we're all in the clear.
But,
Nobody was being racist against the French.
Except the French, which is
Of course.
par for the course. But yeah, Ubisoft seems to be on a roll right now, of sorts. And Star Wars is a franchise I grew up with. I've been a fan of Star Wars since before I watched Star Wars. I had Lego sets of it. So I'm interested to see what comes up.
Yeah.
I haven't been as much of a fan of Star Wars in the last 10 years or so.
Let's say since they've been acquired by a certain other big company,
Yes.
for instance.
Since they've had mouse infestation.
Since they've had I like that. Yeah, pretty much. There are some things I did like that they've done. Rogue One was excellent. I will stand by that movie, obviously.
Oh, yes.
But I don't have, like... even the Star Wars games, I grew up in, like, the Jedi Knight or Rogue Squadron era. Like...
Yeah.
It's a very different animal to what's coming out these days, so... I don't know how I feel about the modern games. None of them have really jumped out at me in any real way. Not even Jedi Outcast, not Jedi Outcast. That was Jedi Knight.
Fallen
Jedi
Order.
Survivor.
Survivors. What was the first one?
Fallen Order.
Fallen Order. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, not even those have really appealed to me.
Yeah, I personally enjoyed Fallen Order. I haven't played Survivor yet, mostly because it's expensive as hell. For a Brazilian at least.
Yeah.
But I think a big thing to note is that every Star Wars game we've gotten since the buyout so far has been by EA. They had the sole right. Star Wars Outlaws is the first game since then that's been developed by another studio.
Yeah, and then I know...
point being, don't screw it up for everybody else, Ubisoft.
Well,
for once.
Here's the thing. I do know, because my friend Jeff showed me a trailer for it, that David Cage is working, apparently, on a Star Wars game. I think it's called Eclipse or something.
Yeah, a different one, yes.
So...
Yeah,
that one will be...
2 or 3 other games being developed.
That one will be
I specifically
interesting.
remember the trailer showing some interesting vistas, them going to cool places, everybody being pumped for it, and then David Cage's studio showing up and deflating 80% of the crowd.
Oh yeah. No, that game is going to be interesting. Good, bad, it's going to be interesting.
I'll grant you interesting.
Yeah.
At least the logo for that one is cool looking.
The logo is cool, and that trailer was great, but it's David Cage. That's a risky proposition.
It is David Cage.
Yeah, I think in total there are like 3 or 4 Star Wars games being developed, each one by a different studio right now. There's Eclipse, there's Outlaws. I think there are rumors of a third game in the Jedi series.
I'm sure there will be
one more. Yeah, I know there's at least one more game that's been confirmed, but I can't remember the details of it. But yeah, they're allowing more devs to experiment with the franchise, like how the Star Wars Vision series allowed a lot of Japanese animators to experiment, and the second season of Visions allowed non-Japanese animators to experiment as well. So at least they are letting people express themselves. But yeah, I enjoyed Fallen Order. I didn't play Squadrons very much because I'm not one for flight simulators, and Battlefront was Battlefront.
Yes, sure was.
It was a whole thing, and that's all I'll say about it. But
I will say, Battlefront being so egregious it opened up the license to other studios was the best thing Battlefront did.
Fair.
Pretty much. Outlaws is going as far as we know, because Lucasfilm does this thing where they portray a new Star Wars thing as being entirely separate from the Skywalkers, only to have Luke Skywalker pop in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But as far as we know, this one is unrelated to the Skywalkers, which is something that I appreciate, because I don't like...
Long may it last.
Yeah, like, I do like the Skywalkers, but I don't like how cramming them everywhere makes the galaxy feel smaller.
Exactly.
This feels more in the veins of Mandalorian, but not with the Mandalorian characters. Ubisoft's been doing some good work lately after the failure there was Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Had to say it. So fingers crossed, and hopefully we'll listen to something that it isn't a cheap man version of John Williams.
I will say this much. You mentioned the Skywalkers making the universe feel smaller, and I absolutely agree. And let's just say, during the last Star Wars anything I watched, I found myself with Kreia running from Knights of the Old Republic 2, and her speeches running rent-free in my head. That says a lot if I'm, like, thinking of Kreia while watching this stuff. That's pretty damning, I think.
Indeed. Now then, let's move on. We also have to look forward to Visions of Mana. Galen, you have very little faith in it, and I play Trails of Mana, so I'm more positive on it.
Yep, that basically sums it up.
Yeah.
I am very divided on the Mana franchise in general, so I have no opinion.
Yeah, and, it's not sealed in either. There is room for them to do terrible things, because, the Secret of Mana remake was horrible, and but they really did the work for Trials, and
if you go back before the Secret of Mana remake, Adventure of Mana's remake, which was on iOS and Vita, which is like the worst possible release strategy you could have had. Please bring that to Steam.
I think they released that on PC since.
They've released Adventures of Mana on PC? I need to check this out.
I think so.
If they have, good. That game is to be played.
Nope, they haven't. Sorry,
they released on Android. So
great.
One more mobile platform, I guess.
Yay! Seriously, that game needs to get into more people's hands. That was a really, really, really great remake.
Yeah. But anyway, after they've done a lot of remake and the franchise kind of had a lot of trouble refining itself, I'm glad they're trying to go for something new. The gameplay seems in line with Trials of Mana from what we've seen from the trailer, so I'm optimistic. I hope they do something nice for it. And
I hope so.
Even if there may be some questionable parts of scenario and gameplay and things, that's all out there. But I'm feeling pretty confident about the music. Given, again, how good the remakes were for Trials of Mana, and the general quality of soundtrack, even if the more disputable entries in the franchise.
Look,
I'm willing to assume this is going to be a good time.
It's Square. They do good soundtracks. That's kind of I would argue, their biggest draw.
Yeah. Now that I think of it, I should re-listen to Harvestella's soundtrack. Hated the game, but the soundtrack surely had some good points. It's a Square game.
Yeah. I can't remember the last time a Square game had a bad soundtrack. I literally can't. I remember bad elements of a soundtrack. Again, we just mentioned FF6 Opera.
That's to be expected.
Ago. But and on the whole, on the whole, they're pretty well known for their musical quality. So
yeah,
I think it's worth bringing up that at least according to Games Radar, the team involved in Visions of Mana. Has a lot of people from the very, very earliest titles, including the creator, Koichi Ishii, and Hiroki Kikuta is coming back as well as one of the composers, along with
Okay.
Tsuyoshi Sekito and Ryo Yamazaki.
Oh, Sakito's back. Oh yeah.
It's the old school team back, basically, so there's hope.
I don't think Sakito was. I mean, I knew Sakito from other places. Like he did some work for. He was the main composer on The Last Remnant. He did a couple of songs from A Realm Reborn. He was part of Uematsu's old band, the Black Mages. Like, he's an Uematsu disciple who's really good on his own. So
Good.
and then I remember, like, 10 years ago, Square had a pretty big round of layoffs, and most of their composers ended up going freelancing. So hearing him compose again does make me feel good. I do like Sakito's work.
Yeah, absolutely. Now then, let's get folksy with some Senua Saga Hellblade 2.
Hell yeah. No pun intended. But Heilung.
They're great.
Yeah, Heilung, man.
They're great.
And like the very first cinematic trailer showed that they're still going to go fierce.
Yeah, the first trailer cinematic had a new version exclusive to the trailer of one of their most famous songs, and then at the Game Awards they came out with an entirely original song for the game, and it was very much in the style of their usual music, and like there are reports of how they taught the main actress, who plays Senua, they taught her how to sing in their style, and like they're going all in with the soundtrack on this one, and I can't wait for it.
Oh yeah.
They look to be very invested.
They played at the Game Awards. Can we once again talk about how awesome it was that Heilung played at the Game Awards, even if it was just for a minute?
It was awesome.
It was great. It was a lot more fire than I expected Jeff Keighley to be okay with.
Apparently, the first 2 rows of the public were a little bit less okay with the smoke, but
You win some, you lose some.
exactly. Alright, then we have some Zenless Zone Zero, which is probably going to release this year as well. More of a live service, so even the release soundtrack isn't going to be the whole soundtrack.
It's Hoyoverse, and I'm getting increasingly angry with them, so I'm definitely skipping this one, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I don't think I'll be able to easily find the time to really get into 3 of their games at the same time.
Their games feel very time-consuming from what I know.
Star Rail, surprisingly not once you get in the daily rhythm of things, which I appreciate.
I'm just going to bring this up as the main reason I'm angry about them. They signed on to this thing that, this setup that gives AI-generated NPCs for games.
Yeah, and that takes big time.
That makes me so angry.
Yep.
So that's just treating its players like a product at that point.
Yeah. And they've definitely had this kind of almost technocratic approach to some elements of game development, which is a shame given how many parts of their success are owed to incredible artistry that none of their technological investments could hope to replicate. And so it feels like the company is almost getting large enough that it has this fundamental internal conflict between this reverence for artfulness and culture that's seen in things as recent as a museum exposition they promoted with kind of crossover events where they integrated some of the elements with historical bronze making techniques.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's very cool. And then there's stuff like what you've mentioned. That's
obvious
kind of
corporate crap.
pulling the opposites. And I will absolutely not reproach anyone that feels iffy about the company.
Yeah.
Is my point.
Yeah.
And but when it comes to Zenless Zone Zero itself, I don't know who the composer is. Like, the big name retired for composing in-house anyway. So I hope this will be an occasion for other quote-unquote big names to emerge, rather than for the horror mix to subsume the identity of every composer within. That would be nice.
And you know what? I need to add a game to our list since you're talking about a live service quasi-gacha. We haven't talked about Arknights Enfield at all.
True. Then let's get to that once I'm done with my points for Zenless Zone Zero.
By all means.
Which are that I hope they have fun with the modern setting. And like, I'm not expecting like a Persona soundtrack or a Mad World soundtrack. My hopes are on the level of, let's say, an S4 League, which was very Korean but had a lot of high energy action tracks that fit its light-hearted, modern, cool, trendy setting. If they manage to give us something on that level, way cool. Musically, at least.
Fair enough.
Now then, Enfield.
So I know very little about this, but if there's one group of developers who seem to be really in it for the art and constantly pushing the artistic side, even if they do make a profit on it, it's been Hypergriff. To the point of taking one of their freelancers, Liduk, who is responsible for several of my favorite designs, and literally hiring her and making her the art director for Enfield. It kind of shows that they're really willing to go the extra mile, and obviously Arknight's soundtrack has kind of been like one of the big live service highlights over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Like, Hypergriff seems like a company that, at the very least, pays attention.
Yeah.
There's a reason one of the running themes in our podcast is Arknight soundtrack is way better than we expected, and it keeps getting better than we expect.
Uh-huh.
No, at this point, my expectations are real high.
Yeah.
And
So
usually
you have,
they still surpass. Usually.
Yeah. So usually, I don't know much about Arknight's Enfield's soundtrack. I know that the English closed technical test just started a few days ago as of recording. I didn't even bother signing up for it. I just have no time.
Yeah. But like, I'll never get into Arknight at this point, but I may get into Enfield, over than Less Than Zero, certainly.
Yeah. I think if I had to compare the two, my loyalty to Hypergriff at this point is pretty strong. Like, they're the kind of people who...
And mine to Hoyoverse isn't.
Fair enough. They're the kind of people who, originally, like, they do, like, theme songs for their characters, and they hired Christina V, who's basically always excellent, to do the song for a character named Blaze.
Yeah.
And basically, this was before there was even any English voice acting in the game other than the Rainbow Six characters, who were crossover characters, and they just got English voice acting because, you know, they just hired the Rainbow Six characters.
Exactly.
Rainbow Six actors to reprise their roles. The fan reaction was, we need Christina V to play Blaze. We need Christina V to play Blaze. Then there's English voice acting added to the game. And it just got louder. And they finally gave voice acting to Blaze, and hey, guess who's voicing her? The Mad Lads actually did. They hired Christina V. So they're the kinds of people who actually pay attention to this and want to do things for the art and put smiles on their audience's faces. And I appreciate this.
If Way Forward can do it, so can they.
I mean, yeah, like, Christina V is one of Way Forward's, like, primary voice directors at this point, right? Like, she does a lot of work for them.
And she also made a theme song for Shantae have Genie Hero and also voices the character.
That's not surprising
That's the comparison.
Well, I mean, the surprise here is there was like a 3-year difference between the release of the character and by extension the theme song and her voicing the character. So
yes,
that also should be recognized. Is it wasn't like an immediate thing. So yeah, so when it comes to Enfield, I have a high degree of confidence that the music will continue in that mold of just let's just be weird and have fun. It'll probably be a lot more atmospheric given it's real time as opposed to the current regular Arknight's tower defense gameplay, so we'll see how that plays out.
We'll see how that plays out. Okay, Eddie, are you all good? You're well installed, you're cozy, you have snacks?
Oh god.
Okay, good. So, Dawn Trail.
Dawn Trail. I mean, it's FF14 and Soken. I did not like Endwalker pretty much at all, but I'll be the first to admit the soundtrack still banged.
Yeah, and I'm curious if it will have the same breakdown as last time of those two main tracks, originals and remakes of previous tracks.
I'm sure it will.
Or if it will change a little. Now I'm tracking the stats. Now I'm invested.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is what Soken does. He does the leitmotif thing. He does the, the remake. Like, this is just how the soundtrack as a whole works. It's been like that since Heavensward.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to joke that I was gonna nap while you guys talk about Final Fantasy 14, but I'll be honest, Soken's too good for me to not be interested in what comes out of the soundtrack at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with some of the things they've revealed in the latest FanFest. Like, the fact that we have a job heavily based on Realm from FF6 means we may have an FF6 theme going around the same way Vamos a la Flamenco went around when Dancer was introduced to the game. We also, the Arcadian, I'm hoping for basically it to be an excuse to have more raid tracks like Alexander's.
That would be nice.
Yeah. Some big old techie bangers.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I really like the Athena boss music from P12, so...
I haven't really gave it a listen. I'll probably pay more attention to it when I get back into the game because I haven't been around for like a year.
Nice. Yeah, no, check out that song if you can. Like, yeah, that one, as you said, a techie banger. That's definitely in that zone.
Excellent. But yeah, like we have again a very reasonable hope that it's gonna be some good work. Let's just see how there will be that one track that surprises us, that one track that everybody loves, that you personally hate, looking at you, the Ultima Thule.
I don't know why I hate that song. I keep trying. I do. I just don't like it. I keep giving it every possible shot. Not even the live performance with Jason Charles Miller on the mic can save it for me. So, like, what can you do at that point?
I get it. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun time one way or another, and like, I wanted to really elevate the theme they're doing of kind of a summer vacation that also sets up for things to come. And the best way to set up for things to come is to kind of do new things, introduce new characters. Don't just rely on what's already been there. They have done an amazing job being this high continuity MMO, but now that they've finished their arc, they need to establish new stuff, as far as I'm concerned.
They do, and the obvious filler of the patch 6.1 to 6.5 narrative definitely needs to be excised. Like, no, you can't have that kind of filler.
Yeah.
It really dragged down the narrative in no small way. I haven't even finished it yet. I need to get back to it. And I'm really hoping Dawn Trail is ready, willing, and able to do something new, even if it's more chill. But it needs to not be filler. It needs to actually have some resonance.
Exactly. Alright, that's pretty much all the games that probably release on 2024 that we have our eyes and our ears on that have been on my list. So let's move on to the next section. Galen, take it away.
What is our next section? Are we doing that playing now, or?
Yes.
Okay, Music Arcade, now playing. Sorry, our production order is Arglefloggerbloggle, so I didn't know if there was a game you expected me to introduce here or not.
Oh no, I was just leaving you do the jingle send-off for once.
Fair enough. Well, I have not many things. I just finished Lost Judgment. Banger soundtrack, way better than the first Judgment. In terms of music, I will say.
Yes. And I'm willing to agree on that.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that more at length on Tuesday.
Indeed.
Anyway, we also have I've been playing Hollow Knight, and that is a okay but unmemorable soundtrack. It's fun. It's fun enough. And then off stream, I've been playing Soulstone Survivors, which I turned on because I had to do some work and just needed to play something while I did, and it's a pretty, okay Unity-based Survivor-like, but I will say, it's got 2 different soundtracks for every stage, depending on RNG, it just decides, and one of the 2 soundtracks is this really vocal sample-filled one that I think is actually super cool, so big thumbs up to that one. I think that's probably the most interesting thing about that game.
Fair enough.
Am I playing anything else?
On my
Not
end, I play some Tunic. Tunic's good. Tunic's interesting.
So I've heard.
Tunic is intriguing. And the speedruns of Tunic are pretty cool. Now that I've seen one just before we recorded. So that was nice. Well, it was because I was on a trip around the New Year's, I loaded up on some party games. So there's been some WarioWare once again, and I've played a game that I've mostly seen streamed, and that is as fun to play as it is to watch, which is Drink More Glurp. Essentially, it's Olympics-like games that have been whose broadcast has been intercepted by weird round aliens that didn't quite understand it, but really want to reproduce it because it looked like fun.
Okay.
And so it's sports competition with weirdo sports, and also the sponsors have a role that's different that one might expect of sponsors, because they take a part of the competitions and act like modifiers. And it's this really fun little game with a jaunty little music that goes boop, 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 and the likes. So, drink more glurp. It is a recommendation and a game.
Fair enough.
And there is one that is shared with Eddie, because I have indeed played More Talented because of their update that added the bandit to it. And it's a nice little game that has some, in particular, the last wave track that goes incredibly hard.
Yeah, I think that game has 4 or 5 songs in total, including the main theme, but they're pretty neat.
Exactly.
The ones that actually...
Better 5 good songs than 20 forgettable ones, I say.
Not wrong. I would say that I'm not a huge fan of the mixing on the final wave track, because at least on my setup, it sounds a bit distorted, because it goes so loud.
That's not
I
a
can
good
see
sign.
That, yeah.
That seems like an engineering failure.
Yeah, it's the one game where that happens on my setup. So weird. But in general, the composition itself, it's really fun, really energetic. I like when the regular battle theme changes to add guitars once you reach the sort of halfway point of your run, and it's getting more difficult.
Yeah.
So cool soundtrack on Talented.
It's nice. It sticks in your head.
It
But
does.
not in a bad way.
Yeah. Game's still in development, so maybe they'll add something, because right now it's fairly repetitive, so who knows.
Yeah. I did one bandit run and it was absolutely busted. Good.
Yeah, I've been doing some runs on occasion when I kind of like have nothing better to play, so let's just at least play something to occupy my mind. And pretty much every character can get busted very easily now. But yeah, that's on my list. That's the first game. Second game is still RoboQuest, because yes.
Yeah.
Don't think I
got the 6 colored crystals at last. So now I have a grappling hook, which means it goes even faster.
God, I'm so behind on unlocks. I think.
Did you know the game also has a jetpack?
Oh God.
Oh God. I just re-unlocked the engineer this past week. I'm so behind on unlocks. But yeah, I'm keeping those 2 games. And I've added 3 more because I had the week off. And then there were the holidays.
Yay!
Yeah.
So, Case of the Golden Idol, I've bought the DLCs, which I didn't have yet. And I mentioned before real quick, but I'll repeat now. Really cool soundtrack if you're into Dead Can Dance, especially in the first of the 2 DLCs. You can buy it directly from the composer on Bandcamp, so if you are really interested, support the artist.
Indeed.
I've also bought Creeper World 4, which was a game I've kind of been looking at for a while. The franchise is one I've followed since I think it used to be on Flash, the first Creeper World.
Absolutely on Flash.
I was kind of weary of the change to 3D in the 4th entry, because
But given that it's a base building tower defense fluid management game, it kinda checks out.
Yeah, it fits that there would be a 3D entry because of the fluid thing, but I was a bit weary because, as far as I know, it's a one-man team. So I went, is this really gonna work out? Is this gonna translate well? It actually does. It's not fully realistic fluid dynamics, but it's pretty close, I'd say.
But is it entertaining fluid dynamics?
It is.
Good.
In fact, most of my playtime recently has been doing user-made maps that they call play as creeper, where you, instead of being the one trying to destroy the waves of blue liquid, you are the blue liquid destroying everything.
Are you a light play as creep fan, or are you a full play as creep fan?
Half and half, I'd say.
Okay.
I do really enjoy what they've come up with, but right now, so for reference, Creeper World 3, Arc Eternal was the previous entry. That one basically had sort of a single play as Creeper mod that everyone used. So you kind of knew what to expect. On the new one, there are 2 different ideas going on in the community for how to do a play as Creeper mod map. So it varies a lot in quality from one map to the next right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think me buying this game and playing it was just a matter of time, really, because as we discovered prior to recording, I have almost 700 hours on the previous entry, and that was that was mostly playing user-based maps. On that one, I played a lot. I played a lot of Play as Creeper as well, and there was one map type. I think they called Corky style the community, and it was Corky because it's the initials of the users who came up with the mod, where you basically are just adjusting the terrain to control anti-creeper to take over the map. So sort of the same vibe, but you are the good guys, I guess. That one isn't as fun on Creeper World 4. There are a couple maps that use that, but it just in 3D doesn't translate as well because you have to look through huge waves of blue creeper, and it's really hard to make out things sometimes. So
Yeah.
That mod was better on CW3, but still, it's a fun game, fun indie title. I do heavily recommend, even though the title is kind of awful, Creeper World.
Yeah, and like I said, in a way that prompted the search of that playtime, I know of two types of people: those that haven't heard of Creeper World, and those that have 300 plus hours on it.
Yep, that tracks. It is
clearly.
It is a game where it gets really addicting to see sort of the snowball effect, I guess.
Yeah.
Either as Creeper in the user made maps or as the good guy, so to speak. You start very slow, but suddenly you get all this power that you are just demolishing everything. And that is very satisfying. And
okay, but does it have music?
It does, and it surprised me. The sound quality for the music in Creeper World 4 is very high for a one-man job. Contrary to the previous games, it has sort of action movie style music. So not particularly memorable, as are most of the soundtracks to action movies. You don't really remember the melodies later. But it has like really good samples there for the instruments. The strings sound really nice. The violins in particular are sort of omnipresent in the soundtrack, and they sound really neat. You do still get that it samples. It is not an orchestra. Even if you didn't know that it was a small indie title, just listening, you would get it that this isn't real instruments. But it's a really high quality sample for everything, which caught me by surprise. So, not memorable, but way better than I expected.
Good.
And
really quickly before I forget, I haven't played it. I've watched a fair bit of content on Fear and Hunger Termina, which has a very interesting soundtrack, which is extremely creepy and immersive, with some landmarks of especially the like two safe spots in the game that contrast to the oppressive atmosphere of the entire town and beyond. And this deserves a mention, I believe.
Fair enough.
I remembered of that because that is also kind of a quasi one-person job.
Sorry, waiting for a bike to go out.
Mm-hmm.
By all means.
Yeah, the Fear and Hunger games, they've fascinated me lately as well. Been getting a lot of YouTube videos recommended to me.
Yeah, so I just gave in, accepted that I'm not going to play these games myself, and watched a playthrough, which was very fun.
Yeah, I doubt I'm gonna play as well. It seems like I get frustrated very quickly and very easily. But it's
Does that.
Even though it's based not based but inspired by a franchise that I don't like, which is the Berserk manga. It does something interesting with that by mixing Lovecraftian horror into it. So it's interesting, and the music is very atmospheric. But I do have one final game that's on my list of games I have played recently, which is Cyberpunk 2077, where I even bought the Phantom Liberty DLC because after patch 2.0 it got really good. I really enjoyed. The original game tried, I think, a bit too hard. The original version of the game, I should say, tried a bit too hard to appease to the tabletop crowd. I think by having loot be incredibly important to gameplay. Even your clothes would give you stats. Your armor was based on what clothing you were wearing. It was really awkward.
Yeah.
The current version of it feels like an immersive sim. It feels like what Deus Ex Human Revolution promised but didn't quite deliver. The 2.0 version of Cyberpunk 2077 is that delivery, let's say.
And like, it's not like appealing to the tabletop crowd is bad, but you need to put a lot of effort to do it right. Looking at you, Baldur's Gate 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think a cyberpunk setting where you depend on your clothing for your stats is not the right one for a video game. It feels awkward. It's much better to have this more free flow vibe it has right now. And
or just give us glamour option.
There was a glamour option. There was I think 6 wardrobe sets that you could pick and choose from, and every piece of clothing you got in the game, which was added in the patch. It wasn't in the base release. But
there it is.
In the 2.0 version, they still have some pieces of gear change your stats, but in ways that make sense. Like prior to 2.0, every piece of clothing had armor stats and additional effects, and they were the way you got armor. Post 2.0, you have bulletproof vests giving you armor. No other piece of clothing gives, except for some helmets, and most of your armor comes from cybernetics. So you are allowed to dress the way you like, even if you don't want to use the wardrobe function. So it's much more free and much better for actually role playing.
Good.
Okay.
And as for the music, I've mentioned before how the bass soundtrack is not really something that gets stuck in my mind. The title theme kind of grew on me a little bit. The sort of aggressive vibe it gives, the how it sort of it's almost a musical representation of the oppressive nature of the corporations in this world. So that grew on me a little bit, but the rest of the soundtrack is kind of meh. But I do need to give a shout out to the radio tracks because they did go to outside artists, but they didn't simply license tracks because it's a game set in 2077. It would be really awkward if you were playing a game set in the future and suddenly Old Town Road was playing the radio. So
yeah, fair.
They actually went to real world artists, and according to the story, they basically went, "We like your sound, and we want you to imagine what your sound would be like in a cyberpunk year 2077."
Reasonable brief.
So I've been really enjoying, in particular, like most of the fan base, the songs by a real world band called Refused, which is a hardcore punk band from Sweden, and they are the real world version of the fictional band Samurai, which is sort of the biggest band in the lore. And to keep it short, Keanu Reeves' character, who is sort of the deuteragonist to the game, he is the ex-lead singer for the band Samurai in the universe. So they are
I
that
remember
big.
that. Yeah.
And their songs are really cool. Like I've discovered the band Refused through this game, and I love their sound now.
Excellent.
And there are other artists. There's a mix of known artists and not that well-known artists. For example, Grimes is in there because she voices a character who happens to be a singer. So hey, let's have her sing. She is a singer after all.
Might as well.
And there was also, I think, 3 songs by Resodrone, which is a 2-man project by Jimson Boaz and, of Final Fantasy fame, Jason Charles Miller. So there's a healthy mix of well-known projects and not as well-known projects, and I think most people are bound to find at least something they like here, because the radios go all the way from pure dance music to a radio that is straight up black metal.
Okay.
But yeah, that's been it for me, because the end of the year was a lot meant a lot of free time on my end.
Sounded like you needed it, judging by how busy you were in December.
Sorry, you both spoke over one another. I couldn't understand either.
Sorry, I was saying it sounded like you needed the break after how busy you were the first part of December.
Oh yeah, like I deliberately asked my boss, can I take a week off after this project is over? Because I need it.
Yep, fair.
The Rana, what were you saying?
I was saying that I didn't have quite as much free time, but I made the most of it.
Fair enough.
Sounds like you did. Now to find a segue.
And on that note,
I think
good enough of a transition.
That'll work. I think that is all the time we have for this episode, our first of 2024. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, you can find out how to contact us in the links in the description below. Please, we welcome your feedback.